Okie dokie. Good eye. Maybe. Let's see if we got sound. Do we have sound? Have we got sound? Have we got sound? We do have sound. Yay. Okay. We can close that because we don't need that. Nobody's here. So I think I'm just going to play for a little while. This thing is not, I think it's got a little leak because it doesn't want to get all the way up to the top. But it's got a really thick tone. It's got more metal. It's got thicker metal than the other one. It takes a little more air to move too. Because the octave key is not centered. It's way off center. It just won't go all the way up to the top. No sense fighting it. Sweet. Yep. Anyway, I gotta read what I didn't read yesterday. I told David Martin I was gonna read his thing from Inverted Alchemy. That's his blog, or one of his blogs, invertedalchemy.com, and Integral Economy. Wealth and the metrics used to measure it have become increasingly devoid of the dimensionality intrinsic to humanity. Welcome to the discussion of a new vision and alternative ancient future of wealth. I learned something new about David. His spirituality seemed very generic. Didn't seem specifically based in anything. He never really talked. He I don't hear it. But here he revealed something about his family. On September 30th, 1727, David Martin walked off the ship Molly with a heavy heart. The 36-year-old had witnessed the death and sea burial of his wife Anna during the crossing. His father, Christian Martin, was still in prison in Europe, having been jailed for his faith. Making his way from Philadelphia to East Earl Township, he commenced farming the 370-acre plot he acquired from the family of William Penn for the sum of £57 7 shillings. In 1748, he reunited with his father in Pennsylvania. It was written of them, with him was also their father, still living, an old man of 79 years, especially the old man and his son David, loving toward us. Being born in Bern, Switzerland around 1691, David knew a life of persecution. Born into the heretical tradition of the Mennonites, he would enter the unfortunate designation of being a poor Palatine, a term given to the Swiss German religious outcast migrants from the region of southwestern Germany. Precisely how he and 300 people made it to Rotterdam, Holland to get to John Hodgson's ship is not clear, but it's reasonable to expect that the trip through war-infested Catholic/Lutheran conflict-filled lands was not an easy exercise. And then there's the matter of crossing the Atlantic during the late summer months, not the best time to travel. So albeit bittersweet, I'm certain that the planks on the dock in Philadelphia offered the percussion of the Song of Liberty that ignited considerable relief. I'm deeply grateful for the meticulous records I have of my family. I love the story of David's father bringing a German scythe to the New World so that he could help his sons harvest the abundant wheat that grew along the Blue Ball Run. I love the records of my family's friend writing to George Washington pleading for clemency for my ancestors who provided food to British soldiers with the reference to the biblical mandate, if thine enemy hungers, feed him. I'm grateful to Amos Hoover, Raymond and Elizabeth Martin, and countless others who preserved the relics of our family so that I can hold them today. On this July 4th, 2021, I find it fascinating that a nation celebrates independence when the previous 20 months have completely indicted the dereliction thereof. This land, defined by the mercantile patronage of industry, is more enslaved today than it was in 1776. Then we had a monarch. Now we have CEOs and their anonymous funders who tax far more than the fruits of our lands. Then we had statesmen who were articulate, learned, and capable of debate. Now we have Twitter feed censorship curated by men who crafted utilities solely designed to indenture and addict. After 245 years, we're less capable to consider liberty than when migrants boarded ships in Europe to begin life in America. How few of us have actually read the Declaration's most critical and sober section? Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. This is where we're at now. The planet's getting real insistent. Living as we are under an alleged state of emergency that has persisted for 18 months with neither evidence nor criteria for an exit, it is manifestly evident that even granting the presence of the scourge of plague that gave rise to the present condition, we no longer maintain the illusion thereof. Notwithstanding the evidence, we find ourselves subjected to abuses and usurpations and efforts to reduce society under absolute despotism. Most recently, and without a single piece of evidence, we've been advised that the healthy pose a risk of mutagenicity that the acquiescent do not. In point of fact, a January 28, 2021 article stated that though the efficacy of gene therapy interventions is not strictly proven, most researchers believe that S protein intervention works. However, in this study, they report concern that variants may in fact rise from the very technology being used. On this day, we celebrate the acquiescence of 47.8% of the population to kneel at the macabre mass served by the presidential and papal bulls. But in the spirit of this land and liberty, the song that should be growing across the land is not the celebration of monarchs and tyrants, rather it's a song of 51.2%. The song of we, the people who walk coerced, threatened, and belittled, will not offer quarter to the enemy that is feared, coercion, and despotism. So on this July 4th, find a link to the song from Broadway's Les Miserables and play it loudly. Do you hear the people sing? Singing the songs of angry men. It's the music of the people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a life about to start when tomorrow comes. Well, yesterday was the 4th of July, and here's tomorrow, the 5th of July. A bank holiday at that. I'm going to pass on reading that. This needs reading, and the Howard Zinn thing needs reading. This is by William Bloom from July 5th, 2010, originally. I'm sick and tired of this thing called patriotism. Most important thought, I'm sick and tired of this thing called patriotism. The Japanese pilots who bombed Pearl Harbor were being patriotic. The German people who supported Hitler and his conquests were being patriotic, fighting for the fatherland. All the Latin American military dictators who overthrew democratically elected governments and routinely tortured people were being patriotic, saving their beloved country from communism. General Augusto Pinochet of Chile, mass murderer and torturer, I would like to be remembered as a man who served his country. Peter Botha, former president of apartheid South Africa, I am not going to repent. I'm not going to ask for favors. What I did for my country. Pol Pot, mass murderer of Cambodia, I want you to know that everything I did for my country. Tony Blair, former British Prime Minister, defending his role in the murder of hundreds of thousands of Iraqis. I did what I thought was right for our country. At the end of World War II, the United States gave moral lectures to their German prisoners and to the German people on the inadmissibility of pleading that their participation in the Holocaust was in obedience to their legitimate government. To prove to them how legally and morally inadmissible this defense was, the World War II allies hanged the leading examples of such patriotic loyalty. I was once asked after a talk, do you love America? I answered no. After pausing for a few seconds to let that sink in, amid several nervous giggles in the audience, I continued with, I don't love any country. I'm a citizen of the world. I love certain principles like human rights, civil liberties, democracy, and economy which puts people before profits. I don't make much of a distinction between patriotism and nationalism. Some people equate patriotism with allegiance to one's country and government, or the noble principles they supposedly stand for, while defining nationalism as sentiments of ethno-national superiority. However defined, in practice, the psychological and behavioral manifestations of nationalism and patriotism are not easily distinguishable, indeed feeding upon each other. Howard Zinn called nationalism a set of beliefs taught to each generation in which the motherland or the fatherland is an object of veneration and becomes a burning cause for which one becomes willing to kill the children of other motherlands or fatherlands. Patriotism is used to create the illusion of a common interest that everybody in the country has. Strong feelings of patriotism lie near the surface in the great majority of Americans. They're buried deeper in the more liberal and sophisticated, but are always reachable and ignitable. Alexis de Tocqueville, the mid-19th century French historian, commented about his long stay in the United States. It is impossible to conceive a more troublesome and more garrulous patriotism. It wearies even those who are disposed to respect it. George Bush Sr. pardoning former Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger and 5 others in connection with the Iran-Contra arms for hostages scandal, said first the common denominator of their motivation, whether their actions were right or wrong, was patriotism. What primitive underbelly there is to this rational society. The U.S. is the most patriotic, as well as the most religious country of the so-called developed world. The entire American patriotism thing may be best understood as the biggest case of mass hysteria in history, whereby the crowd adores its own power as troopers of the world's only superpower, a substitute for the lack of power in the rest of their lives. Patriotism, like religion, meets people's needs for something greater to which their individual lives can be anchored. So this July 4th, my dear fellow Americans, some of you will raise your fists and yell, USA, USA, and you'll parade with your flags and your images of the Statue of Liberty and your royal meats. Never mind. But do you know what the sculptor copied his mother's face for the statue? A domineering and intolerable woman who had forbidden another child to marry a Jew. Patriotism, Dr. Samuel Johnson famously said, is the last refuge of a scoundrel. American writer Ambrose Bierce said, begged to differ, he said the first. Patriotism is the conviction that this country is superior to all other countries because you were born in it, says George Bernard Shaw. Actions are held to be good or bad, but not on their own merits, but according to who does them. And there is almost no kind of outrage. Torture, the use of hostages, forced labor, mass deportations, imprisonment without trial, forgery, assassination, and bombing of civilians, which does not change its moral color when it is committed by our side. The nationalist not only does not disapprove of atrocities committed by his own side, but he has a remarkable capacity for not even hearing about them. This is George Orwell. Pledges of allegiance are marks of totalitarian states, not democracies, says David Kurtzer, a Brown University anthropologist who specializes in political rituals. I can't think of a single democracy except the United States that has a pledge of allegiance. Or he might have added that insists his politicians display their patriotism by wearing a flag pin. Hitler criticized German Jews and communists for their internationalism and lack of national patriotism, demanding that true patriots publicly vow and display their allegiance to the fatherland. In reaction to this, post-war Germany has made a conscious and strong effort to minimize public displays of patriotism. Oddly enough, the American Pledge of Allegiance was written by Francis Bellamy, a founding member in 1889 of the Society of Christian Socialists, a group of Protestant ministers who asserted the teachings of Jesus Christ lead directly to some form or forms of socialism. Tell that to the next Tea Party ignoramus who angrily accuses President Obama of being a socialist. Following the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, we could read that there's now a high degree of patriotism in the Soviet Union because Moscow acted with impunity in Afghanistan and thus underscored who the real power in that part of the world is. Throughout the 19th century, and particularly throughout its latter half, there had been a great working up of this nationalism in the world. Nationalism was taught in schools, emphasized by newspapers, preached and mocked, and sung into men. And excuse me, we have a call, and I suspect this is going to be an idiot. Hello? Hello? Like I said, I suspect it's going to be an idiot. I better block that before he starts loving it. It became a monstrous cant which darkened all human affairs. Men were brought to feel that they were as improper without a nationality as without their clothes in a crowded assembly. Oriental peoples who had never heard of nationality before took to it as they took to cigarettes and bowler hats of the West. And this is an observation of H.G. Wells. And nationalism, this is Zionism. So that everybody has their land that's supposedly theirs. To me, it seems a dreadful indignity to have a soul controlled by geography. That was George Santayana. Another thing the Americans have to be thankful for on July 4th, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has a news feature on their website called Find Insurance Options. You just provide certain information about your family size, your age, your employment situation, your financial situation, whether you have certain disabilities or diseases, whether you now have Medicare or other health insurance, or how long you have not had health insurance, whether you've been denied insurance, whether you're someone's dependent, a veteran, American Indian, Alaskan Native, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the site gives you suggestions as to where and how you might find health insurance that might suit your particular needs. The head of HHS, Kathleen Sebelius, tells us this is an incredibly impressive consumer tool, adding that the site is capable of providing tailored responses to about 3 billion individual scenarios. This information can give folks choices that they just didn't have any idea they had available to them. Isn't that remarkable? Where else but America could one have such a choice? Certainly not in communist Cuba. There it's only one scenario, one size fits all. You're sick, you go to a doctor or to a hospital, and you get taken care of to the best of their abilities. No charge, doesn't matter what your medical problem is, doesn't matter what your financial situation, doesn't matter what your employment situation, there's no charge. No one has health insurance, no one needs health insurance. Isn't that boring? Communist regimentation. Separation of oil and state. On May 19th, in a congressional hearing, Representative Jason Altmaier of Democrat of Pennsylvania asked BP America President Lamar McKay, is there any technology that exists that you know of that could have prevented this from happening? I don't know of a piece of technology that could have prevented it, replied McKay. Given the extremely grave consequences of a deep water oil drilling accident, that's a pretty good argument that such operations are too risky and dangerous to be permitted, is it not? Moreover, if it could have been prevented, if BP had not been so negligent and reckless to save money, can we count on all oil companies in the future to never put profits before safety? I think not. And if an accident happens, can we count on a company being able to rectify the damage quickly and efficiently? Apparently not. So will those who serve corporate America learn a lesson from the BP Gulf of Mexico disaster? Well, consider the following. Oil companies, even as you read this, are busy making plans for further Gulf drilling. In June, the Mineral Management Service of the U.S. Interior Department was continuing to issue waivers to these companies which exempt them from submitting a detailed analysis of the environmental impact of their plans, not at the moment for drilling new wells, but to modify their existing projects in the Gulf. One waiver was to a British company called BP. Here's the district manager for Louisiana of the Mineral Management Service. Hello. Bye. Obviously, we're all oil industry. Almost all our inspectors have worked for oil companies and on these same oil drilling platforms. Yeah, I'm just not going to take calls from assholes on private lines. Obviously, we're all financial analysts at the preeminent bank, J.P. Morgan Chase, announced some good news for us. The U.S. gross domestic product could gain slightly from all the expenditures for cleaning up the mess, adding that the magnitude of these setbacks looks dwarfed by the scale of U.S. macroeconomy. And 3 leading congressional Republicans recently referred to the spill as a natural disaster. Right. If I were the president, I would in fact prohibit all underwater drilling for oil permanently, especially below a certain depth. I mean, these guys, that was the main thing, was they didn't have even a robot that could get down that deep. President Obama announced a 6-month prohibition has run into a brick wall of oil companies, politicians, and the courts. He'll cave in as usual, but I wouldn't. How would I make up for the loss of this oil? Not by importing more oil, but by sharply reducing our usage. Here are two suggestions to begin with. The U.S. Department of Defense is not only the leading consumer of oil in the United States, it is the leading oil consumer in the entire world. A 2007 report by defense contractor posits that the Pentagon in its foreign wars and worldwide military support operations, such as maintaining thousands of bases at home. They don't maintain thousands of bases at home and abroad. Maybe one. Maybe a little more than 1,000. They're admitting to 800. I forget, but it's not thousands. Our wars in the future may be fought just to run the machines that fight them. If the American defense industry, I'm not taking calls from private number that's going to just talk shit. Accordingly, as president, I would take the admittedly controversial step of abolishing the United States military. Well, I don't know about that, but I certainly would want to be green in it and get back to Eisenhower's vision of military that's there for constructive purposes mostly. Try and think of things as a class assignment. Try and think of things that would improve the quality of life in American society. Things that money could bring about that would not be covered by $1 trillion. If you believe that having no military would open the United States to foreign invasion, state who would invade, why would they, blah blah blah. Well, the world military it's all the same people arming everybody. Yeah, you lost me there, buddy. Yeah, you lost me there. Right there, you get. Hey, Milton, not much. Not much. That's kind of a hard holiday for the revolutionary crowd. That's very people are very critical of the United States government. Gotta stay critical of the 4th of July, right? And I just it's so hot, and I got an issue with apparently sand fleas. I bombed in here and that didn't do anything. This is helping a little, but not that much. There was another thing by Howard Zinn about nationalism. I read that the other day. There it is. Put away the flags. I think this was also from 2010. Yeah, this was July 3rd, 2010. It's Put Away the Flags by Howard Zinn. On this July 4th, we would do well to renounce nationalism and all its symbols, its flags, its pledges of allegiance, its anthems, its insistence in song that God must single out America to be blessed. It is not nationalism, that devotion to a flag, an anthem, a boundary so fierce it engenders mass murder, one of the greatest evils of our time, along with racism, along with religious hatred. These ways of thinking, cultivated, nurtured, indoctrinated from childhood on across generations, have been useful to those in power and deadly for those out of power. National spirit can be benign in a country that's small and lacking both the military power and a hunger for expansion, like Switzerland, Norway, Costa Rica, and many more. But in a nation like ours, huge, possessing thousands of weapons of mass destruction, what might have been harmless pride becomes an arrogant nationalism, dangerous to others and ourselves. Our citizenry has been brought up to see our nation as different from others, an exception in the world, uniquely moral, expanding into other lands in order to bring civilization, liberty, and democracy. That self-deception started early. When the first English settlers moved into Indian land in Massachusetts Bay and were resisted, The violence escalated into war with the Pequot Indians. The killing of Indians was seen as approved by God. The taking of land is commanded by the Bible. The Puritans cited one of the Psalms, which says, "Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession." When the English set fire to Pequot village and massacred men, women, and children, the Puritan theologian Cobb Mather said it was supposed that no less than 600 Pequot souls were brought down to hell that day. On the eve of the Mexican-American War, an American journalist declared it our manifest destiny to overspread the continent guided by Providence. After the invasion of Mexico began, the New York Herald announced, "We believe that it's part of our destiny to civilize this beautiful country." It was always supposedly for benign went to war. We invaded Cuba in 1898 to liberate the Cubans and went to war in the Philippines shortly after, as President McKinley put it, to civilize and Christianize the Filipino people. As our armies were committing massacres in the Philippines, at least 600,000 Filipinos died in a few years of conflict. Elihu Root, our Secretary of War, was saying the American soldier is different from all other soldiers of all other countries since the war began. It is the advanced guard of liberty and justice, of law and order, of peace and happiness. We see in Iraq that our soldiers are not different. They have, perhaps against their better nature, killed thousands of Iraqi citizens. But some soldiers have shown themselves quite capable of brutality and torture. Yet they are victims too of our government's lies. How many times have we heard President Bush tell the troops that if they die, if they return without arms or legs, or blinded, it's for liberty or democracy? One of the effects of a nationalist thinking is a loss of a sense of proportion. The killing of 2,300 people at Pearl Harbor becomes a justification for killing 240,000 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The killing of 3,000 people on September 11th becomes a justification for killing tens of thousands of people in Afghanistan and Iraq. And nationalism is given a special virulence when it is said to be blessed by Providence. Today we have a president invading two countries in 4 years who announced on the campaign trail in 2004 that God speaks through him. We need to refute the idea that our nation is different from, morally superior to, the other imperial powers of world history. We need to assert our allegiance to the human race and not to any one nation. That's pretty much what the hippies have been saying all along. I don't know how much of this I'm going to be able to take. My throat's real scratchy. My throat's kind of scratchy. And I read what I wanted to read. And not exactly any serious, stimulating conversation. So I think I'm gonna bug out. Thanks for coming. Happy day. Bye.